Have you ever considered what lies beyond the veil of our known reality, not just in the vast cold emptiness of space, but in the very fabric of existence itself? Something that defies human comprehension, something so utterly alien that its mere presence unravels the delicate tapestry of life and sanity. We often imagine invaders from the stars as monstrous beings with teeth and claws, or advanced civilizations with destructive technology. But what if the most terrifying threat wasn't a creature or a weapon, but a fundamental property, a force of nature so utterly foreign that its existence warps our perception, corrupts our very being, and leaves an indelible, horrifying scar on the world? Today we delve into the chilling depths of H.P. Lovecraft's masterful cosmic horror, The Color Out of Space. A tale that whispers of a malevolent hue, an indescribable shade that came crashing down from the cosmos, bringing with it a slow, insidious contamination that transformed a quiet New England farm into a horrifying monument to the unknown. A story that plumbs the depths of alien contamination, body horror, and the crushing inevitability of cosmic indifference. Our journey begins not with a bang, but with a profound and unsettling silence. A desolate stretch of land known only as the Blasted Heath, lying just west of the ancient whispering town of Arkham, Massachusetts. A region steeped in its own dark legends and shrouded in an inexplicable gloom. A place where no sane person dared to build, where the earth seemed to sicken, and the very air carried a tangible weight of forgotten horrors, a landscape that was once verdant and thriving. But now, for reasons the locals could only speculate upon with a shiver and a glance at the darkening sky, lay barren and withered, devoid of life. A place of twisted vegetation, skeletal trees, and an eerie, pervasive greyness that seemed to suck the very light from the world. This desolation, this palpable sense of wrongness, was not born of drought or blight, as one might initially assume, nor of some conventional human tragedy, but from an event so profound and so alien that it defied all scientific understanding, leaving behind a scar on the land and a deep psychological wound on the collective memory of those who dared to whisper its name. The narrator, an unnamed surveyor, arrives in Arkham with the pragmatic task of investigating the land for a new reservoir project. A project that necessitates the flooding of this very blasted heath. A decision met with a chilling mixture of apprehension and morbid fascination by the townsfolk, who recount the old tales with hushed voices, painting a picture of an unholy blight, a place where sanity frayed and the natural order simply ceased to exist. A place whose very history was rooted in a cosmic catastrophe that had transpired some decades prior. A story so bizarre and so terrifying that it had, over time, calcified into a local legend. A cautionary tale whispered late at night. Seeking a clearer understanding, a more direct account of the horror that had so thoroughly defiled this patch of earth, the narrator seeks out the last living witness, an old man named Ammi Pierce, a man whose eyes held the haunted glint of one who had seen too much, whose soul had been irrevocably scarred by an encounter with the truly, profoundly alien. Ammi, initially reluctant, his voice raspy with age and a deep-seated terror that time had failed to dull, eventually begins to unravel a tale that transcends mere local folklore. A narrative that plunges into the deepest, darkest fears of humanity, revealing a truth far more disturbing than any ghost story, a truth about an entity that arrived not to conquer, but simply to exist, and in its existence to utterly destroy. Amy Pierce paints a vivid, albeit tragic picture of the Gardner family, the doomed inhabitants of the farm that once stood at the heart of what would become the Blasted Heath. A family of simple, hard-working folk, inextricably bound to the land that had sustained generations of their ancestors. There was Nahum Gardner, the patriarch, a stout, honest man, deeply rooted in the soil, proud of his farm and his family, a man of simple pleasures and unwavering resilience, a man whose world was defined by the cyclical rhythm of planting and harvest. His wife, a woman of equally hardy stock, though perhaps more susceptible to the subtle shifts in the psychological landscape, was his steadfast partner, sharing in the joys and hardships of their agricultural life. They had 3 sons. Thaddeus, the eldest, a capable young man, already learning the intricate dance of farming. Merwin and Zenas, younger, full of the boisterous energy of youth, their futures seemingly laid out before them, tied to the rich, fertile earth of their home. Life on the Gardner farm was one of diligent labour, of early mornings and late nights, of the quiet satisfaction that comes from tending to the land and watching it yield its bounty. A life utterly unremarkable in its peaceful normalcy, utterly unprepared for the cosmic horror that was about to descend upon it, an event that would shatter their idyllic existence and plunge them into an unimaginable nightmare. The arrival of the meteorite was sudden, violent, and utterly unprecedented. A searing streak across the night sky, culminating in a deafening crash that shook the very foundations of the Gardner farmhouse. The next morning, a crater marred the landscape, a gaping maw in the earth. At its centre lay the cosmic messenger, an object unlike any Nahum, or indeed any scientist, had ever encountered. It was larger than any meteorite typically found, a ponderous metallic sphere, yet its composition defied terrestrial analysis, resisting the drills and chisels of the arriving scientists, its surface cool and smooth, shimmering with the peculiar unsettling iridescence. But the most disturbing aspect, the true harbinger of the ensuing terror, was not its material or its unearthly size, but the strange, unidentifiable glow that emanated from it, an effulgence of a colour that defied human description, a shade that simply did not exist within the known spectrum of light, a colour that Amy, decades later, still struggled to articulate, calling it simply the colour, a hue that was somehow both vibrant and utterly dull, both present and absent, a palpable wrongness that permeated the air around the fallen star. The scientists, baffled and intrigued, set up their equipment, but their instruments yielded nothing definitive, offering no explanation for its bizarre properties, its inexplicable resistance to heat and pressure, its seemingly non-Euclidean geometry, its utter alienness. The meteor, a silent, impassive observer of the world it had invaded, refused to yield its secrets, only to shatter inexplicably into dust one evening, a cloud of iridescent particles dispersing into the chill night air, leaving behind only the crater and an enduring sense of profound unease. The scientists departed, their curiosity unfulfilled, their scientific instruments rendered useless in the face of such profound otherness, leaving the Gardners to grapple with the lingering aftermath, unaware that the true terror had only just begun to manifest, silently, insidiously, a cancerous presence seeping into the very ground beneath their feet. The first signs of contamination were subtle, almost imperceptible, a gentle whispering of abnormality that began to emanate from the well, the very source of the Gardner family's sustenance. The water, once clear and sweet, took on a faintly metallic taste, a strange, almost imperceptible tang that initially went unnoticed, or was dismissed as a minor irritation. But soon the changes became more pronounced, more disturbing. The trees closest to the well, particularly the massive oaks and elms that had stood as silent guardians for centuries, began to shed their leaves out of season, their branches twisting into grotesque, unnatural forms, their bark cracking and oozing a viscous, unidentifiable sap. The vegetation surrounding the meteor's impact site grew with an unprecedented, alarming vigor. Plants that should have withered in the early autumn months instead exploded with an unnatural, almost feverish bloom, their flowers boasting hues that were subtly, terrifyingly off-kilter, their leaves an iridescent, sickly green that seemed to pulse with that same indescribable colour. It was a growth devoid of health, a monstrous vitality, a perversion of nature's delicate balance. Nahum, ever the pragmatic farmer, initially attributed these abnormalities to some unknown chemical byproduct of the meteorite, perhaps an unusual mineral deposit, a transient effect that would eventually dissipate, dismissing the growing unease with a forced rationality, attempting to rationalize the irrational, to fit the cosmic into the mundane. He tried to ignore the subtle hum that seemed to vibrate from the well on moonless nights, the way the shadows deepened and coalesced around the crater, the way the very air felt heavier, more oppressive. But the subtle changes began to accumulate, each one a tiny crack in the edifice of his understanding, each one a harbinger of the utter dissolution of his family and his world. The animals, however, possessed a more primal, unburdened sensitivity to the encroaching horror, their instincts screaming a warning that human reason was all too eager to suppress. The horses, usually calm and docile, became skittish and wild, rearing on their hind legs at the slightest sound, their eyes wide with an unholy terror directed at unseen spectres, their manes bristling with an inexplicable dread, refusing to approach the tainted well, shying away from the distorted trees near the blasted heath, their whinnies carrying an undertone of pure, unadulterated fear. The cows, once placid and predictable, began to behave erratically, their milk taking on an increasingly peculiar consistency, a thin, watery liquid with a strange metallic sheen and an even stranger, repulsive taste, becoming utterly undrinkable, a direct reflection of the corruption that had seeped into their very essence, into their very sustenance. The insects, too, underwent a grotesque transformation, growing to abnormal sizes, their chitinous bodies gleaming with that same alien iridescence, their movements jerky and unnatural, their buzzing a cacophony of distorted sounds that grated on the nerves. A swarm of mutated life that seemed to proliferate with unsettling speed, their very existence a testament to the pervasive, insidious reach of the alien contamination. Even the small birds that once chirped cheerfully around the farm took flight, never to return, their absence a silent yet profound omen of the encroaching horror, leaving behind a chilling stillness that only deepened the sense of dread. Ami described the unsettling quiet that descended upon the farm, broken only by the frantic, terrified movements of the remaining animals, their cries of distress echoing through the unnaturally vibrant, yet ultimately dying, landscape. The crops, the very lifeblood of the Gardner farm, offered the most tangible, horrifying evidence of the pervasive contamination. The fruits, once plump and sweet, grew to prodigious, almost grotesque sizes, their skins shimmering with that same indescribable colour, their flesh radiating an unholy glow in the deepening twilight, a visual feast that promised a taste of unparalleled sweetness. Yet, when bitten into, they proved to be utterly repulsive, their taste a putrid, metallic bitterness, an acrid assault on the senses that left a lingering, sickening aftertaste. The vegetables, too, swelled to monstrous proportions, their shapes contorting into bizarre, almost sentient forms, their texture fibrous and repellent, their flavour utterly poisonous, an abominable mockery of sustenance, a cruel trick of nature that produced an abundance that was utterly inedible, utterly useless, a mockery of the farmer's labour. The harvest, once a source of pride and provision, became a source of profound despair, a testament to the utter corruption of the land. Nahum, despite his initial stubborn refusal to acknowledge the supernatural, began to feel the crushing weight of this undeniable blight, the insidious decay of his livelihood, his family's sustenance, his entire way of life. He watched his fields yield a bounty of abominations, a harvest of cosmic horror, each monstrous fruit, each twisted vegetable, a silent, chilling testament to the alien presence that had rooted itself deeply in his soil, corrupting everything it touched. The farm, once a symbol of life and bounty, was slowly but surely becoming a graveyard of grotesqueries, a grotesque pantry filled with poison. The most terrifying manifestation of the colour's influence, however, was not on the land or the animals, but on the Gardner family themselves, a slow, agonizing descent into madness and physical corruption, a horrifying transformation that began subtly, insidiously, eroding their sanity before devouring their flesh. Nahum's wife was the first to succumb completely, her mind, perhaps more delicate than her husband's rugged pragmatism, unable to withstand the relentless psychic assault of the alien entity. She began to withdraw, her once sharp mind clouding, her eyes taking on a vacant, haunted stare, her words devolving into incoherent babbling, punctuated by sudden piercing screams that echoed through the otherwise silent house, screams that spoke of an unimaginable terror, of visions beyond mortal comprehension. Eventually she was confined to her room, her condition deteriorating rapidly, her body itself beginning to change, her skin taking on a greyish, almost translucent quality, her features distorting into a mask of pure agony, her limbs becoming stiff and unnaturally fragile, her very form seeming to disintegrate, to melt, to become something else, something utterly inhuman. The sounds that emanated from her room became less and less human, a sickening cacophony of gurgles, rasps and wet, dragging sounds that spoke of a process of ghastly metamorphosis, a horrific unmaking of the human form, a slow, agonizing dissolution witnessed only by the terrified family. Her eldest son, Thaddeus, soon followed a similar horrifying path. He too began to show signs of mental deterioration, becoming withdrawn, his movements sluggish, his eyes vacant, his speech garbled and disconnected, his sanity fracturing under the ceaseless silent pressure of the colour's influence. He was eventually found in the attic, his body ravaged by a similar unholy wasting, his skin flaking away, his flesh dissolving into a powdery ash, leaving behind a skeletal form that somehow still seemed to glow with that faint, sickening luminescence, a ghost of his former self, consumed from within by an alien contagion. The horror for Nahum and his remaining two sons, Merwin and Zenos, deepened exponentially with each passing day, as they witnessed the slow, agonizing destruction of their loved ones, knowing with a crushing inevitability that their own fates were inextricably linked to this pervasive, malevolent presence. Merwin and Zenos, young and vulnerable, perhaps fled in terror, or perhaps, and this is the more chilling implication, they too succumbed to the same slow, insidious decay, their bodies simply dissolving into the dust and light, leaving behind no trace but a terrible lingering absence, their disappearances adding another layer of unspeakable dread to the already overflowing cup of horror. Their fates were ambiguous, their end untold, but the implication was clear. The color consumed everything, leaving only emptiness in its wake. Nahum, the stubborn patriarch, was the last to hold out. But even his formidable resilience was no match for the cosmic horror that had taken root in his home, his land, his family. He clung to the fragments of his sanity, his body slowly deteriorating, his strength failing, his skin taking on that same greyish, sickly hue, his mind ravaged by sleepless nights and the unspeakable visions that haunted his waking hours. He spoke of sounds, of whispers, of the sensation of something drawing the very life from him, a draining, a siphoning of his essence by an unseen yet palpably present entity. His once stout frame withered, his eyes sank deep into their sockets, gleaming with a feverish, terrified light, his voice becoming a mere whisper, his words filled with a desperate, fragmented attempt to articulate the inexplicable, the utterly alien. He moved through his desolate farmhouse, a haunted shadow amidst the ruins of his life, his family, his sanity, a living testament to the destructive power of the unknown. He became a grotesque parody of his former self, a walking corpse, his flesh slowly consumed by the alien blight, leaving behind a husk of a man, his spirit tormented, his body succumbing to an agonizing, unimaginable decay, a transformation that was far more terrifying than any sudden, violent death, for it was a drawn-out, agonizing dissolution of self. Throughout this escalating nightmare, Ami Pierce remained a terrified yet compelled observer. He visited Nahum frequently, his visits fueled by a desperate hope that he might offer some solace, some practical help, or at the very least bear witness to the unfolding tragedy. He saw the changes firsthand, the monstrous plants, the terrified animals, the decaying family, the subtle yet pervasive glow that now emanated not just from the crater, but from the entire surrounding land, an unearthly luminescence that pulsed with that indefinable colour. He witnessed Mrs. Gardner's agonizing deterioration, heard her inhuman screams, felt the oppressive weight of the alien presence that seemed to thicken the very air around the farm. His visits became less about offering help and more about a morbid, horrified fascination, a desperate attempt to understand, to rationalize, to categorize the unfathomable. He saw the fear in Nahum's eyes, the slow erosion of his sanity, the physical decay that mirrored the blight on the land. Each visit deepened Ami's own terror, solidifying his understanding that this was no earthly phenomenon, no mere disease or madness, but something far, far worse, something from beyond the stars, a living, breathing, consuming entity. He felt the cold touch of cosmic indifference, the profound insignificance of humanity in the face of such profound otherness. He saw the very fabric of nature unraveling, the laws of physics bending and breaking under the influence of the alien entity. The climax of this agonizing saga arrived on a night of unparalleled dread, a night etched forever into Ammi Pierce's traumatized memory. Driven by a desperate, almost suicidal urge to check on Nahum one last time, Ammi approached the blighted farm, the air heavy with an unnatural stillness, the very shadows seeming to writhe with an unseen presence. As he neared the well, the focal point of the contamination, a horrifying spectacle unfolded before his terrified eyes. From the depths of the well, a colossal column of that indescribable colour erupted, a pulsating, shimmering geyser of alien light that pierced the blackness of the night, casting an unholy glow over the entire blasted heath. It was a spectacle of terrifying beauty, a vibrant, terrifying manifestation of the entity that had silently devoured the Gardner family. Within this blinding, unearthly glow, Ammi witnessed the final, horrifying moments of Nahum Gardner. The old farmer, his body ravaged and barely recognizable, his face a mask of ultimate terror, was consumed by the shimmering column of light, his emaciated form dissolving, melting, disintegrating into nothingness, leaving behind not a trace, but a mere flicker of that alien luminescence. Simultaneously, the decaying remnants of the Gardner farmhouse began to crumble, the very stones dissolving into shimmering dust, the surrounding trees twisting and contorting into grotesque skeletal forms before collapsing into glowing ash, the land itself convulsing as if in its death throes. Ammi, his mind reeling from the cosmic horror, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm of pure, unadulterated fear, fled the scene in a desperate, mad for survival, the piercing silent light of the colour burning itself into his very soul, leaving him with an indelible mark of cosmic terror. A witness to the ultimate annihilation, a testament to the fact that some things are not meant for human eyes, nor for human comprehension. The aftermath was a desolate tableau of cosmic horror. The blasted heath, now a permanent scar on the landscape, a monument to the unholy visitation. The well, the epicenter of the horror, lay choked and stagnant, its waters a viscous, iridescent slime, forever poisoned, forever emanating that faint, unearthly glow, a silent, malevolent beacon of the alien presence. The soil remained barren and infertile, producing nothing but twisted, skeletal vegetation, its very essence corrupted, its vibrancy utterly drained, leaving behind a landscape of ash and decay. No animal dared to graze upon its blighted soil. No bird dared to nest in its skeletal trees. The land itself seemed to remember the horror, to perpetually radiate an aura of profound wrongness, a chilling testament to the enduring power of the colour. Even decades later, as the narrator observes, the blasted heath remains an anomaly, a place of profound dread, a whispered warning to those who dare to venture too close, a reminder that the universe holds terrors far beyond our petty human concerns, terrors that exist outside the very fabric of our reality, operating on principles we cannot even begin to grasp. Ammi Pierce, the sole survivor, carried the weight of this memory, his narrative a chilling testament to the cosmic indifference of the universe, a universe where entities exist not to harm or help, but simply to be, and in their being, to utterly obliterate all that we hold sacred, all that we understand, all that we are. The true terror of the color out of space lies not in a monstrous creature or a destructive force, but in the incomprehensibility of the color itself. It is not merely a hue we cannot perceive, but an entity, a fundamental property of an alien reality, a sentient force that operates outside the very laws of our physics, our biology, our understanding of existence. It is not evil in a moral sense, for it has no malice, no intent, no will as we understand it. It simply is, and in its being, it corrodes, dissolves, and absorbs all that is terrestrial, all that is human, all that is familiar. It is a slow, insidious consumption, a subtle unraveling of reality, a terrifying glimpse into the abyss of the unknown. Lovecraft's genius lies in portraying this entity as something utterly abstract, something that cannot be fought, reasoned with, or even fully comprehended. It embodies cosmic horror at its purest, demonstrating the utter insignificance of humanity in the face of vast, uncaring, and profoundly alien forces that exist in the boundless, indifferent cosmos. The story explores themes of contamination, not just of the physical world, but of the mind and spirit. As the gardeners slowly succumb to a madness born of sheer incomprehension, their bodies undergoing a grotesque, agonizing metamorphosis, a process of body horror that is all the more disturbing for its slow, inevitable progression. The inevitability of their destruction, the inescapable doom that hangs over them from the moment the meteorite crashes, amplifies the sense of dread, forcing us to confront the fragility of our existence, the thin veneer of order that protects us from the chaos of the cosmos. So, the next time you look up at the vast, star-dusted canvas of the night sky, remember the blasted heath, remember the gardeners, remember Amy Pierce's haunted eyes, and consider the chilling possibility that somewhere out there, beyond the reach of our telescopes and our science, exists a color that does not belong. A color that, if it ever graced our world again, would bring with it not invasion, but a silent, insidious annihilation, dissolving our reality, our sanity, and our very flesh into an indescribable, horrifying luminescence. It's a terrifying thought, isn't it, that the ultimate horror might not be something that attacks us, but something that simply is, and in its utterly alien presence, unravels the very fabric of our known world. If you found yourself chilled by this journey into Lovecraft's cosmic dread, if the blasted heath has taken root in your nightmares, then please take a moment to like this video, show us your support, and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the terrifying, the unknown, and the utterly inexplicable realms of horror fiction. We're constantly exploring the shadows of human imagination and the chilling realities of cosmic indifference. And we wouldn't want you to miss a single terrifying tale. Thank you for listening, and may you never encounter a color that defies description.